9 spine-chilling horror tales of bad choices. Discover the sinister cost of ignored instincts. Sarah stumbled home on a wind-torn night, dragging her exhausted body through the dim streets of Fairhaven. Each house loomed above her like a lurking specter, and the shadows whispered secrets she dared not decipher. A chill swept through her as she passed Mr. Thompson's place. The darkened windows seemed to draw her in, offering false warmth while shrouded in mystery. The elderly man had always been too helpful, too eager. Each time he smiled, a pit grew in her stomach. She brushed it off, letting hope outweigh instinct. Just a friendly neighbor, she told herself as she dreamt of escape from her monotonous life, but unease held her at bay. The memories of her late-night shifts haunted her, each echoed laugh from Jake's school taunting her from the recesses of her mind. The cruel ways kids can be, how they hunt down vulnerability, that's what kept her up at night. "Sorry, I'm late, Jake," she whispered, barely able to meet her son's gaze. Tonight would be different. She had to trust Mr. Thompson just this once. He offered to babysit, her exhausted soul convinced this would lighten her load. Against the screaming voice inside her head, she hesitantly left her son in the care of the man whose intentions felt wrapped in a thick fog. But Jake began to feel it, the unease curling around his heart like creeping ivy. As soon as Sarah stepped out, dread filled the air. Whispers slithered through the house. They drifted from the basement, intertwining with the strange symbols carved into the garden soil. His pulse quickened. Then his phone buzzed, a frantic text from Jake. "Mom, I think he's hiding something," jolted through her like a lightning bolt. Panic twisted in her gut as she stormed through the door upon arriving home. The house felt foreign, alive with an energy that knotted her stomach. "Jake?" she called out. Her voice echoed emptily into the stillness. No response. Glancing around, her heart hammered in her chest. Jake stood frozen at the basement door, the door she had never seen before, shrouded in darkness and cobwebs. Could it lead to the secrets kept in the shadows? The air grew thick, saturated with unseen fears, leaving her breathless as she stepped closer. Every creak of the floorboards echoed her mistrust. What lay behind that door? Mom Jake's voice trembled, breaking through the silence. "What if we aren't alone? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." With trembling hands, they pushed open the door. The staircase spiraled down into consuming darkness. Cold air brushed against them like icy fingers, twisting their resolve. Sarah glanced at Jake's wide eyes, listening, feeling the unease of folklore creep back, myths of neighborhoods hidden and untrusted. The world outside pulsed almost alive as they descended. Strange flickers danced just beyond sight. Were they being watched? Push forward, push into the dark. She had to protect her son, not just from bullies, but from this neighbor's warm facade hiding something far more sinister. At the very edge of the unknown, as the darkness swallowed them whole, Sarah felt the weight of everything they had ignored, all their instincts that had screamed in silence. Stepping deeper into the abyss, the whispers intensified, warning them of a truth buried beneath the layers of neglect. "Mom," Jake gasped, pointing into the dark. What is that?" The descent continued, the sensation of eyes upon them amplifying their panic. As they vanished into the spiraling shadows, one thought whispered dangerously through the void. What if what they found was more than just a neighbor's secret? What if they uncovered the dark heart of Fairhaven itself? The staircase creaked beneath their weight, each step an echoing reminder of their foolishness. Sarah gripped Jake's hand tighter, her nails digging into his skin as they ventured deeper into the darkness. It felt endless. The air thickened, wrapped in an oppressive silence that screamed and pulled at her intuition. "What is it, Mom?" Jake whispered, his voice barely breaking the suffocating stillness. Terror danced in his eyes, and Sarah could see the cold sweat beading on his brow, mirroring the unease coursing through her veins. "I don't know," she replied, forcing bravery into her voice while her heart pounded like a drum against her ribs. Stay close. The whispers grew louder, flitting through the heavy air like butterflies, darting just out of reach of comprehension. They had a life of their own, oddly rhythmic like a chant or a call calling them deeper into the gloom. She felt as though they were being beckoned, a moth drawn to the flame. Despite the fear radiating through her entire being, they reached a dimly lit landing. The faint glow revealed strange symbols painted on the walls. Words warbled in an ancient language, an awful song that sent chills racing down her spine. Sarah's instincts screamed to turn back. But where else could they go? The main door was long gone, swallowed by the shadows behind them. What would that? Jake stammered, pointing to the far end of the corridor where the glow seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. A figure emerged, shrouded in a robe, its features obscured and hidden. The whispers stopped abruptly, as if the very air was holding its breath. "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, though her voice trembled anger and fear mixed into a potion far more potent than she'd anticipated. The figure didn't answer at first, instead stepped closer, and the light caught a glimpse of a face. It was wrinkled and twisted, expression impossible to read. The eyes narrowed, harsh and sharp like knives aimed directly at them. "You should not have come here," it hissed, voice like gravel scraping along rusted metal. "You will disturb the balance." "What balance?" Sarah pushed, a deep-rooted dread swirling within her. Her heart raced. She couldn't understand but felt an inevitability looming, a darkness much larger than their own uncertainties. The figure raised a hand, skeletal fingers beckoning them forward. The shadows twitched with life, coiling like serpents around their ankles, urging them to follow. Jake squeezed her hand, every fiber of his being fighting against the compulsion to move further into the dark. "Mom, I don't want to go," he whimpered, terror gripping him in a chokehold. But the whispering grew fierce. "Embrace what you fear. You cannot resist." In a moment of desperation, Sarah turned and bolted for the stairs, heart racing. The shadows clawed at her, trying to grip her legs, pulling her back toward the robed figure. She yanked Jake along, panic overriding everything. "Run!" They fled upwards, the darkness behind them stretching and clawing as they ascended, the whispers now howling with fury. Just as they reached the door, a chilling arm of shadow reached out, ensnaring Jake's ankle. He stumbled, eyes wide with terror, and she felt an ice-cold grip brush against her neck. "Help!" Jake screamed, his voice breaking as Sarah's heart sank. With an instinct fueled by love and terror, she wrenched him free, and they burst through the door into the world above, gasping for air. But Fairhaven was still twisted. The streetlights flickered wildly, shadows writhing against the pavement. Panting, Sarah turned to her son, but a thought lodged itself in her mind. They hadn't truly been alone down there. Would that figure follow them? Had they only glimpsed the first layer of what lay beneath Mr. Thompson's home? A deafening silence wrapped around them, suffocating and heavy. The whispers had faded, leaving only the echoes of fear barely transparent now but palpable. They weren't safe. The heart of darkness wasn't far behind. "Mom, what do we do now?" Jake whispered, searching her gaze for reassurance. She looked at the house, where their horror had begun, heart hammering as a flicker of light danced behind the basement window. What if the true terror had just begun? Sarah's pulse thumped thunderously in her ears as she remained fixated on that flickering light. A part of her screamed to run, to get as far away from the house as possible. But another part, one that was morbidly curious, urged her to understand what was happening. The whispers hadn't just come from the depths of the basement. They had followed them. They didn't just vanish into thin air. "Did you see that?" Jake said, his voice trembling as he pointed toward the window. She nodded, a knot tightening in her throat. The shadows beneath the house danced with vivid fluidity, twisting and contorting as if alive. She took a half-step back, pulling Jake with her, but he pulled away. "Let us go back," he begged. "No, we can't go down there again." Sarah's voice rose involuntarily, laced with desperation and fear. The house loomed larger now, its very presence suffocating, pressing against her chest like a weight too heavy to bear. But even as she said it, a tendril of unease wound itself around her thoughts. What if the shadows had claimed something? What if, chasing the unknown, they lost everything? "Jake," She whispered, squatting to meet her son's frantic gaze. "We need to understand what we saw. We can't just ignore it." The words felt like a betrayal, admitting they had to confront the darkness that had almost consumed them. "Why can't we tell someone? Maybe the police?" he pleaded, eyes wide and shimmering with tears. Sarah clenched her jaw. She knew they would never believe them. This was not a normal fear, nor a regular situation. She had seen things that would never sit right in the minds of those who didn't experience them. As they stood paralyzed at the edge of the porch, the air crackled with tension, almost tangible. Something darted past the window, vanishing so quickly it sent tremors through Sarah. A fleeting glimpse of something pale, a face with unnatural angles, and hollow eyes that seemed to stare right into her soul. "Mom, what was that?" Jake gasped, clutching onto her arm. "I don't know." She turned back toward the house, heart pounding. The flicker of light, now wavering uncertainly like the last breath of a dying flame. "But we need to confront it. We need to find out what is going on, for our own sake." Taking another deep breath, Sarah reached for the doorknob. It felt cold and lifeless against her palm, heart racing as she twisted it. The door swung open with a soft creak, revealing a dim interior cloaked by shadows heavier than before. A fresh wave of fear washed over her as she stood at the threshold, but there was no turning back now. They were in too deep, sucked into this nightmare already. "Stick close, Jake," she instructed, stepping inside. The air was stifling, thick with the scent of dampness, and something else, something metallic, that made her stomach churn. The whispers had returned, low and insistent, echoing off the walls like ghostly hands trying to pull them in. They tread cautiously, the light behind them fading as the door inched shut. Each step deeper felt electric, charged with a buzzing anticipation of dread. The flickering glow led them down another corridor, twisting like a serpent, lingering just out of reach. And then it happened. From the shadows emerged a figure, the same robed entity, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "You've come back," it rasped, voice swirling around them. The shadows surged as if responding to its command, and Sarah's heart dropped. They hadn't escaped. They had walked right back into the snare. Desperation surged as Jake whimpered, "We should have never come here, Mom." In that split second, Sarah understood. They had awakened something far beyond their comprehension. Unable to find words, she turned Jake, but the shadowy hands had already started to close in, closing the noose around them tighter. "Embrace your fear," the figure hissed, and Sarah wondered what if embracing it meant acknowledging that their fight had only just begun. What if the darkness had more in store for them than they could possibly imagine? Sarah's instincts screamed to flee as the robed figure loomed closer, the shadows around it twisting and writhing like serpents eager to strike. She grabbed Jake's arm tightly, her sanctuary amidst the chaos, but there was nowhere to run. The walls of the house seemed to pulse with life, tightening their grip as if the structure itself was part of some secretive entity, hungry for their fear. "What do you want from us?" Sarah found her voice, shaking but fierce as she faced the darkness head-on. The figure tilted its head, a maddening smile stretching across an elongated face that seemed both familiar and terrifyingly alien. "Everything you've sought to unearth," it whispered, the sound slithering through the air like dark smoke. The shadows hungrily crept closer to their ankles, threatening to anchor them in place. "Mom," Jake cried, his voice cracking. "It's trying to trap us. We need to get out." Sarah searched for the door, her heart hammering against her ribcage, but the entrance felt miles away. "Jake, stay close," she whispered, recognizing the urgency in her voice. Every fiber of her being screamed that they needed to escape, yet her feet felt plastered to the floor. Suddenly, the entity lifted a hand, and the whispers grew louder, merging into an indistinguishable cacophony of anguished voices. "You wanted the truth, Sarah? Open your mind and see." With that, a wave of energy rushed from the figure, engulfing her. Images pierced her consciousness, visions of the past, secrets of the house that clawed deep into the origins of the unholy darkness that resided within. Faces of those lost to the shadows flashed before her eyes, their mouths frozen in silent screams. A memory surfaced, children laughing, a family in the sun, and then darkness exploded, twisting innocence into horror. "Jake!" she gasped, pulling him close. The world spun, the shadows stretching with nimble fingers attempting to lure them apart. "Stay with me," she shouted, focusing on his wide, terrified eyes. With sheer will, she wrenched her gaze from the figure, shoving her fear aside, even as it clawed at her spine. "We can't let it win." Fists clenched, she squeezed Jake's hand tighter. She thought of every laugh, every moment of joy they'd shared, and held on to that light. It shone like a beacon, pushing against the enveloping darkness. "Embrace your fear." The entity's voice now shrieked with fury, loud enough to rattle the floors. The shadows quavered, hesitating for just a heartbeat. "Not today." Sarah's resolve fortified her trembling voice. "You don't own us." They pushed forward, driven by adrenaline. The shadows battled against them, picking at their hopes, but each step felt like defiance against the suffocating grasp of despair. With one final lurch, stunning clarity erupted in Sarah's mind. She could see the thin lines of light, like threads weaving through the shadow's grasp, pathways of escape. "Run!" she yelled, feeling the energy crackle beneath her feet, shouting for Jake as she dashed toward where she sensed the door might be. But the dark figure roared, a dreadful sound that echoed through the halls. "You cannot escape your fate." As they barreled through the corridor, a chilling cold swept over them, pulling at their clothes, chilling their skin. Breathless and full of determination, Sarah's heart raced as she caught sight of the door again, faintly lit, as if calling them home. But the entity was relentless. Sarah felt the air grow heavier, almost suffocating. They were so close. But would it be enough to break free? "Mom, it's coming!" Jake shrieked, his eyes wide with fear. "Keep moving," she urged, unwilling to look back as she launched herself forward. Every ounce of her being strained against the darkness, against the chaos threatening to swallow them whole. And just as they reached the threshold, a blast of icy air forced them back. Straining against the invisible hold of the shadows, Sarah could barely hear the figure behind them whispering, "You will return to us or suffer eternally." With a terrified gasp, she flung the door open, light flooded in, blinding her momentarily with hope. But would the darkness allow them to escape? As the grip of the shadows slackened, Sarah felt the haunting truth of its words seep into her bones. They might have won this battle, but the war? The war was just beginning. "Let us go, Jake." And with that, they raced into the blinding light, but not without feeling the lingering eyes of darkness boring into their backs, promising to follow. What horrors awaited them on the other side? The light engulfed them fully, washing away the shadows like a tide retreating before dawn. Sarah blinked against the sudden brightness, clenching Jake's hand tighter. They stumbled forward, the world around them shifting in kaleidoscopic bursts of color. "Are we safe?" Jake's voice trembled, and she could see confusion and fear carved deep into his young features. "I think so." But even as she said it, icy tendrils of doubt clawed at her heart. The memories of the figure's whispering promises echoed in her mind, dark and persistent. The outside air was fresh, invigorating, yet something felt wrong. The sun beat down too harshly, illuminating the college-like campus they had escaped to, but it felt eerily deserted. The familiar sounds of laughter and chatter from students drifted like whispers on the wind, yet the shadows of worry lurked just out of sight. She scanned their surroundings, seeking safety, but every building felt like it was part of a vast labyrinth designed to contain them. "Mom, what if it comes through the door?" Jake's brows knitted with fear. We can't think like that," she said, trying to rein in her own panic as her eyes searched for a sign of life. "Let us find help, okay? We just need to get somewhere busy." But the campus was a graveyard, dormant and hollow. Sarah felt the weight of despair pushing against her chest, each step echoing with a fear that lingered just behind them. She clutched Jake's hand tighter, trying to drown out the haunting sounds of the shadows that whispered just beyond the fringes of her mind. Then they heard a soft rustling behind them, breaking the stifling silence. Sarah spun around, ready to confront whatever terror lurked in the corners of their sights. Her heart pounded like a war drum, throbbing in her ears. From the shadows of the nearby trees, a figure emerged. It wasn't he, the robed entity. Instead, it was an old man, hunched and feeble, yet there was a spark in his eyes that glinted with something sinister. "You shouldn't have come back," he rasped, stepping closer, each movement deliberate, as if dragging the weight of untold stories with him. What do you mean? Sarah demanded, forcing herself to stand tall as dread curled into her gut. He knows you're here. His voice quavered slightly, a chill punctuating his words. The darkness doesn't forget. Jake shrank behind her, eyes wide with fright. Who? Who knows? Panic thickened the air. The man leaned closer, revealing a network of creased lines on his face that resembled a map of suffering. The one who waits. He will come for you, just like he has for others. Sarah's pulse raced. We're safe. We escaped, did you? His laughter echoed unnervingly, mingling with the breeze that suddenly turned cold. The darkness doesn't play by the rules you think you understand. You think you've left it behind, but it's always one step behind, waiting. Frustrated, Sarah glanced around desperately for an escape route. The man's words burrowed deep into her mind, churning up the fear she sought to crush. Get away from us, she shouted, feeling Jake grip her waist, his breath hot against her. But the shadows felt different now, alive and pulsing beneath the surface of the ground, creeping closer with each heartbeat. The man stepped back into the shadows, but not before delivering a last proclamation. Remember, light always casts a shadow. Even here. At that moment, a sound split the heavy air, a low growl that reverberated from the depths of the campus, sending vibrations through the ground beneath their feet. Sarah's heart sank. She turned to Jake, his face ashen with terror. We need to get away. Now. As they sprinted forward, the old man's words echoed in her mind, mingling with the growl that had ignited her panic. The one who waits will always find you. What lurked in the shadows? Would it follow them back? The growl echoed through the campus, sending a chill skittering down Sarah's spine. It clawed at her resolve while the sound reverberated through the air, heavy and menacing. She urged Jake to move faster, her previous conviction of safety an illusion melting away with each pulse of that dark growl. They dashed down a winding path lined with hollow, ghostly trees. Each step felt heavy, like wading through thick mud. The shadows, blacker than the night itself, slithered around them. Her legs burned, but she sensed the darkness trailing close behind, pushing her onward like a sinister force, hungry and relentless. Mom, where are we going? Jake's voice quivered, each word brimming with panic. I don't know, she admitted, glancing back over her shoulder. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and flee, but the lingering whisper of the old man echoed too. The shadows could be anywhere, and she couldn't afford to let them reach her son. Up ahead, a flicker of motion caught her eye. As they approached an old, crumbling building, she caught sight of a faint glow spilling from the windows. Hope searched for a second. If there were people inside, maybe they could help. Jake, come on, she urged, pulling him toward the door, its surface weathered and splintered. The moment they reached it, she hesitated. A thin layer of dust coated the doorknob. It must be been ages since anyone has been here, Mom. Jake tugged at her sleeve. Maybe we should keep running. No, we can't. She pushed the door open with a groan, the sound echoing ominously as the knob turned easily in her grip. The interior was dim, illuminated only by the dull light streaming through the grimy windows. Dust motes danced in the air, swirling like tiny phantoms. Inside, the corridor was lined with shattered photographs, their faces blurred as if the very memories had been consumed by time. Sarah's heart sank as her gaze swept over the remnants of a once vibrant place now surrendered to despair. But they didn't have time to dwell on the past. They could hear it now, a low, resonant thrum, like the sound of a heartbeat, thrumming from the depths of the building. It was wrong, too powerful and enveloping. Do you hear that? Jake asked, voice trembling. Yes, she snapped, urgency sharpening her tone. We need to find a room with people, or a way out. They hurried deeper into the building, but with every step, the darkness waned and deepened, swallowing the feeble light that struggled against it. Suddenly, from a room at the end of the hall, laughter bright, carefree, and utterly wrong floated through the air. It chilled her blood. She glanced at Jake. His eyes were wide, reflecting the flicker of fear in hers. Mom, I don't like this, neither do I, she whispered back, holding his hand tighter. But she stepped closer, compelled by a force she couldn't understand. The laughter grew louder, sweet and enticing, drowning out the growl that had haunted them. No, this wasn't right. As she reached the doorway, A painful memory of the old man's warning slammed into her like icy water. This wasn't he laughter. It was a trap. "Run, Jake," she shouted, yanking him back just as shadows sprung from the edges of the room, stretching ominously towards them. They turned, legs pumping wildly, adrenaline surging as they raced back down the hall, but the growl had transformed. It erupted into an echoing chorus of ominous laughter, coming from all directions, reverberating off the walls and pulling them closer, feeding off their fear that it engulfed them like a thick fog, wrapping around their minds, whispering doubts, weaving shadows into their very souls. "Jake!" Sarah yelled, feeling the warmth of his small hand slip from hers. A surge of panic clawed at her chest. "Jake! No!" But as she turned, the shadows twisted violently, and all she could see was darkness pressing in on her son, smothering her pleas. What could she do? How could she save him? Despair gripped her. The laughter swelled to a deafening roar. The shadows closed in, threatening to consume everything. But then, through the chaos, a flicker of light pierced. The darkness dazzling and penetrating. The glow beckoned, promising salvation against all odds. "Jake!" She lunged toward the flicker, desperate. But shadows erupted from the floor, reaching for her, clawing at every part of her being. And then the laughter stopped. Silence erupted, thick and suffocating. "Mom." Jake's voice peeked through, fragile and fainter than before. The flicker of light grew brighter, but so did the shadows closing in, grasping, hungry. What had she awakened? And would they ever escape? Sarah blinked rapidly against the oppressive darkness. "Jake!" she screamed, her voice barely rising above the dread swirling around her. She had to find him, had to pull him from the shadows before they stole him away entirely. The light danced just out of reach, weaving through the thicket of darkness like a firefly seeking safety. She felt it pull at her, a magnetic warmth in the cold space that surrounded her. But for every step toward it, the shadows pressed back harder, snaking around her ankles, whispering venomous promises of defeat. "Mom." The sound of Jake's voice pricked like an ice pick. It was muffled, distorted, as if it came from beyond a veil. Panic surged in her chest, swelling until she was almost lightheaded. "Stay where you are," she barked, every instinct telling her to chase that voice. Instead, she fought against the darkness, summoning the last reserves of strength she had. She could see more shadows gathering, pooling like ink where the light faltered. The flickering glow was enticing enough to almost drown out the oppressive laughter echoing around her. Sarah felt a prickling sense of urgency clawing at her mind. Someone, or something, was reaching for her, wanting to consume her very essence. "Mom, over here." The cry was a fragile lifeline. She pivoted towards it, following the sound, heart pounding in her throat. She could almost feel Jake's warmth pulsing out of the shadows, a beacon against the growing despair. Suddenly, a whirlwind of cold air swept past her, raising goosebumps on her skin. It howled like specters trapped just out of sight, and in that moment, she felt as if the walls themselves were closing in. Desperation gripped her, and she lunged toward the flicker of light, leaving her instincts behind. But the shadows surged forward, expansive and insatiable, extinguishing the glow momentarily. "Jake!" she cried, stumbling, her voice breaking. The laughter returned, this time intermingled with the cries of countless others, trapped like her, their fear palpable and thick. "Mom, help!" A shriek tore from Jake, sounding more and more fragile as the shadows greedily swallowed the sound. Then, as if they willed it into existence, doors on either side of the corridor groaned open, revealing dimly lit rooms filled with distorted reflections of real-life figures. Sarah's heart sank. They looked like old friends, long lost. But their faces frozen in mad rapture twisted her stomach. Nothing felt real anymore. "Come play with us," a disembodied voice beckoned. A trap, a horrifying lure dripped in sweetness, desperate to ensnare her heart. "Stay away," she yelled, muscles tense and trembling, instinct kicking in as she pulled back, retreating from the beckoning figures. But the shadows lashed out, and she felt the cold grip of tangible dread wrap tighter around her ankles. "Jake!" she screamed again. "Where are you?" But the laughter became an unbearable cacophony, echoes of empty promises crashing into her ears. From behind the warped figures, something stood, looming larger than life. dark and terrible. Out of the corner of her eye, she spotted movement. A flicker of light darted back towards her, a reflection of hope, or another deceitful specter. Just as she was about to take a step toward it, the shadows lunged forward, and a dozen hands, black and twisted, reached out, pulling her back and dragging her toward the room of laughter. "Help me." The words ripped from her throat as panic threatened to break her. She fought against the grip, cold fingers clawing at her skin, but with each frantic yank, the realm of shadows whispered monstrosities, promises of despair suffocating her mind. Then she heard it again, his voice. "Come on, Mom." And she saw him, caught in the shallow light, terrified yet still reaching for her. She summoned every ounce of strength, ripping her mind from the grasp of the shadows. "Jake!" she screamed, and without thinking, she dove toward him, but her feet met something slick, and she fell, hard. "Jake!" But he was gone. An unholy scream rippled through the darkness around her, a furious growl that hinted at the terror lurking just beyond her grasp. Had she lost him for good? The shadowy forms seemed to dance now, taunting her, and with them surged the laughter, an ocean of sinister delight washing over her. But then a sharp instinct cracked through the tumult. She had to fight back. She wouldn't let them win. The flicker of light, she thought desperately. It had to lead to him. Without a second to spare, she propelled herself upward, eyes locked on the glow, ready to face whatever horror awaited. But as she surged forward, the shadows tightened their grip, curling around her throat, and the laughter swelled anew, dark and mocking. With every heartbeat, Sarah felt the pulse of inevitability. In this realm of nightmares, survival exacted a toll. As she surged towards the light, she realized it wasn't just Jake's life that hung in the balance. Something deeper and more horrible loomed, something waiting for her to cross the threshold of understanding. What if the only way out was a question inherent to their fate, a choice that could condemn them all? As she drew close, fear gripped her, and uncertainty painted the future in shades of dread. What price would she have to pay to save her son? What awaited her in that flickering light? The cold pressed in on Sarah like a shroud, clinging to her skin, paralyzing her resolve. The urge to flee flickered in her mind, but every muscle screamed to push onward, to reach that elusive light where she could see Jake. She felt sweat bead on her forehead, mingling with the weight of impending dread that permeated every inch of this twisted realm. "Mom!" Jake's voice echoed back to her, punctuating the shadows, each syllable laced with desperation. She was close, so close, but the nightmarish laughter crescendoed, a mocking symphony that roared from unseen mouths, promising despair. "Join us forever." The utterance was demonic, oily in its tone, and it slithered into her thoughts, making her question her purpose, her resolve. As she stumbled again, Sarah's foot slipped on something slippery, wet and foul. She recoiled, the panic rising in her throat, almost choking her. Eyes wild, she scanned the ground, heart racing as she expected to see what lay beneath. But all she could make out was a swirling darkness, its texture shifting impossibly like liquid smoke. "Jake!" she called out again, the sound raw and hoarse. The shadows shuddered in apparent delight, twisting closer, feasting on her fear. She couldn't let it consume her. Not now. They were waiting for her to break, to succumb to hopelessness. With an inward scream, she ripped herself free from the sticky grasp of the darkness that sought to bind her. One step, and then another toward that flicker, that last beacon of warmth. The light pulsed like a heartbeat, alive and promising. She risked a glance back. The shadows recoiled, slinking away as if repelled by her determination. "Mom, please." The urgency in Jake's voice drove her forward, hammering at her resolve like a nail. She could almost see him, a silhouette fighting to break free, the light outlining his tiny frame against an abyss that threatened to swallow them both. Sarah lunged again, her fingers clawing at the air, reaching out as if she could snatch her son from the jaws of the darkness. The laughter twisted sharper, morphing into a cacophony of voices, the shadows feeding on her hope. "We'll take him, Sarah," they whispered, slithering around her, creeping into her mind, chilling her bones. "Get away." She could feel her heart thundering, fear surging, whipped into a frenzy by the shadows. Just a few more steps, and then she was there, at the very edge of that pulsing light. The moment she crossed into it, she felt the cool grip of the shadows lift. An electric warmth coiled around her, enveloped her in something that felt so safe. But as she gasped for breath, the flicker extinguished, darkness rushing back into view, filling every corner in fathomless black. "Jake!" she cried out, and the shadows trembled. From the veil, something began to rise. A hulking figure, humanoid in form but warped and sickening, creeping into view. A smirk stretched across its grotesque features. "I told you I'd take him," it hissed, and its voice was a hideous mockery of her son's innocence. The shadows roared in laughter, the sound like nails on a chalkboard, sending shudders through her body. "No!" Sarah screamed, fighting against the rising tide of fear, her instincts screaming to run, but her heart clawed for something deeper, her son, the bond. In that terrible moment, as the figure loomed closer, she felt the heaviness of choice weigh down on her. She could run. She could flee. But would Jake remain behind, one step back? The figure surged forward, jaws open wide. A choice: to save herself, or to confront the darkness no matter the cost. Trembling at the precipice of despair, she felt the weight of decision crashing over her. "Mom!" Jake's voice was fading, and Sarah felt her determination fray. What would she do? Would she succumb to darkness, or risk everything for love? Desperation mingled with a thrumming sense of dread that left her gasping. And just as she braced against the creeping chaos, a horrifying thought struck her. What if the darkness didn't want her dead? What if it craved something far worse? As the figure lunged toward her, a chill settled deep within, leaving a single, burningly urgent question lingering above all else. What unspeakable pact would she have to make to save her son from the clutches of the unrelenting dark? The figure loomed closer, its grotesque smile widening with each heartbeat. Sarah's instincts blared like alarm bells, urging her to flee, yet she felt frozen against the encroaching horror. Jake's voice was fading, weak, desperate. "Mom, please," the shadows whispered around her, their breath foul and oppressive. "Choose," came their taunting echo. "Save yourself. Leave him." Panic surged again, clawing at her throat. Did they want her to give up on Jake? Could she do that? The sweet, innocent face of her son flickered in her mind, illuminated against the dark backdrop of terror. She would not let the darkness claim him. With a fierce determination, she stood tall, even as the figure advanced, stretching towards her with obsidian fingers like broken branches seeking to ensnare her. It reeked of decay, a scent that turned her stomach. "Get away from my son!" Sarah screamed, her voice echoing back at her, filled with raw power that shocked even herself. Taking a step forward, she clenched her fists, gripping at the last strands of hope within her. Suddenly, the light ignited once more, blinding and warm. It burst forth in vibrant flashes, breaking through the veil of darkness, illuminating the infected shadows that writhed and shrank back, screeching in agony. "Mom, I can't see you," Jake shouted, his small voice a beacon in the chaos. She felt an urgency fight through her limbs, rallying her heart, pulling her toward the source of the light. "Jake, hold on." She forged ahead, her feet pounding against the ground as though she were trying to outrun her own fears. The figure recoiled, twisting and contorting as the light tore at its very existence. Each pulse of brightness seemed to weaken the looming horror. Yet, just as she stretched out her hand, wanting to grasp Jake's, the shadows exploded back, thick and sludgy, wrapping around her legs like serpents. No, she felt their icy tendrils wrapping around her, claiming her again. The chilling laughter was back, a swirling cacophony of voices toying with her, pulling her deeper into despair. "You were so close." It was a low, mocking hiss that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "But now you'll face the true price of your defiance. We will take what you cherish most." A sinking feeling washed over Sarah. The shadows surged upwards, pulling at her, dragging her down into the depths of their hellish embrace. She thrashed, her heart pounding with terror, longing for the warmth of her son. "Jake, I want to let them take you." She clawed at the air, but the darkness only laughed, thickening around her, suffocating her with despair. Whispers spiraled through her mind, each word a razor's edge. "Join us forever." The grotesque figure loomed nearby, its eyes glinting with malevolence, slathering with anticipation. In that disorienting moment, Sarah's panic morphed into clarity. The darkness wasn't just after her son. It sought to crush her spirit, to make her part of its emptiness. With everything she had left, she took a deep breath, focusing on the warmth of love for Jake blooming in her chest. Do it for him, she thought, channeling every ounce of her resolve. She steeled her heart against the folds of despair, summoning the strength to push against the shadows that sought to claim her. For Jake, she would fight. A surge of energy coursed through her as she bellowed, "I will not give up." The cheerful laugh of her son rang true in her heart, fueling her determination as the fractured light burst forth with renewed strength, scattering the thickened shadows momentarily, revealing glimpses of her child's face. But the battle was far from over. Just as she felt the pull of love drawing her closer to Jake, a husky voice rang out, low and deadly. "You think this will save you?" The darkness only desires what's inside her. Breath caught as the shadows around her began to morph, shaping into familiar forms, twisted memories of people she thought she lost. Friends, loved ones, voices rising alongside Jake's, all fading into madness. And in that moment, she understood the abyss craved something far worse than her life. It wanted her very essence, her spirit. What price was she willing to pay to save him? "Mom." Jake's voice bubbled through the tempest of despair, and in that instant, Sarah knew she had no choice. Just as the shadows lunged, she braced for the unknown ahead. What would she have to sacrifice to redeem her son from the depths of this darkness? The horrifying pact loomed closer, and the chilling question hung, heavy in the air. Would she pay their unforgiving price, forever altering the fabric of her soul? A stillness broke through the tumultuous chaos as Sarah stood tense, her heart racing against the weight of her decision. Jake's voice echoed in her ears, and she felt the icy tendrils of the shadows slacken just slightly, as if pondering her resolve. What would she give to save him, to ensure he was safe and whole? The grotesque figure sneered, relishing in her internal struggle. "You want to know the price?" It whispered, breath hot and rancid. "Your sacrifice will keep him alive, but your soul will remain in darkness." The words hung in the air like a noxious fog. Sarah steadied her breath, focus centering on her son. The love for him surged, battling against the darkness trying to consume her. "Jake," she breathed, forcing the words through a throat suddenly raw. "I will do anything. Just stay with me." The shadows writhed as if ignited by her vow, and the figure grinned wider, eyes dancing with malevolent glee. "Then embrace the void. Surrender your spirit to save your child." Sarah felt a surge of disgust clawing at her core. To surrender? To give up everything she was? But as she grappled within herself, Jake's frightened eyes burned through her haze of uncertainty. He was her light in the darkness. "No," she screamed, shaking her head. "You don't get to take us both." The figure recoiled slightly, surprised by her defiance. The shadows twisted wildly, threatening to wrap tighter around her. But she felt a spark ignite within, desperation distilled into raw strength, refusing to yield. "Jake, look at me," she commanded, piercing the encroaching darkness with her gaze. When he looked up, eyes wide and trusting, Sarah's heart surged. She gripped the light inside her every laugh, every shared moment. The scent of his hair when she carried him to bed, days spent with him bright and laughing. "Fear is what binds you, but love is what sets you free," she cried, channeling all her strength. The shadows paused, their mockery momentarily muted by the power of her conviction. "You will not take either of us." The glow surrounding her intensified, expanding like a wildfire. Jake's small form flickered in the luminescence, as if the love coursing through her ignited a protective barrier, repelling the encroaching shadows. With one final roar, Sarah lunged forward, arms outstretched toward her son. The shadows screamed, furious at the disruption, but their ghastly sounds faded into clarity. She felt the overwhelming burden of the dark figure behind her pushing against her soul, but she didn't falter. She powered through the pain. "Jake, hold on," she shouted, feeling the energy of her determination radiate outward. A wall of light exploded forth from her, drawing upon all the love she contained within her heart. The shadows shrieked, writhing back in fear, as the brilliance engulfed them in a blinding flash. The darkness unraveled, scattering like ashes caught in the wind. The figure's face contorted in rage before it dissolved into wisps of shadow, unable to withstand the force of that unwavering love. With a final surge, everything fell silent as the light wrapped around Sarah and Jake. When the illumination receded, they found themselves standing amidst a vast, sun-kissed landscape, the vibrant colors alive and pulsating with warmth. Relief washed over Sarah as her heart pounded steadily. Jake's small hand warm in hers, heart fierce with reassurance. "Are we safe?" Jake asked, holding his breath, eyes wide with wonder. "Yes, my love," she whispered, breathless. "We're safe now." They stood together, hearts thrumming in the afterglow of their courage, emboldened by their bond, each step renewed by the trials they faced. The shadows had been defeated for now, but they both understood that darkness could return at any time. Yet deep inside, a flame of hope flickered, unquenchable and blazing. They turned their backs to the void, letting the warmth of the sun guide them forward, hand in hand, knowing that together they could face anything. The world felt alive again, laughter and light cascading around them, a testament to the strength found in love and resilience. "Shall we go home?" Sarah asked, squeezing Jake's hand tighter, a promise forged deep between them. With a nod, they set out on their path, casting the shadows behind, hearts light, free, and ready to embrace a future unwritten. Thank you for coming on this journey with us. If you love this story and want more spine-chilling tales that keep you on the edge of your seat, you need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and let us know you're part of the family. We want your thoughts. Flood the comments section with your reactions, theories, and what you think might happen next. And don't forget to share this video with at least 5 friends who can't miss out on the thrill. Your support means everything, and together we can face any shadow that dares lurk in the corners.